What if we put every Commander Precon from Magic's early years head to head in a tournament bracket to see who truly stands above the rest? That's exactly what we're doing today. Welcome back to MTG Daily, and get ready because this video is the first in a series where we crown the greatest Commander Precon of all time. Today we're covering the early era, 2011 through 2016. That's everything from the very first Precon decks all the way up to the infamous 4-color commanders of 2016. Here's how it works. Each set of Precons goes into its own mini bracket. Decks fight it out until one deck becomes the champion of this set. Then, the winner of each year will face off in an era finals bracket to determine the ultimate champion of the 2011 to 2016 era. Every matchup is judged on 5 categories: power at release, consistency, salt factor, upgrade path, and legacy. At the end of this video, we'll have one Precon standing tall as the champion of the early era, and it will move on to face the winners of the later eras in the grand finals. Let's start at the very beginning. Commander 2011. This was the very first Precon release, the experiment that laid the foundation for every deck that came after. 5 decks hit the scene: Heavenly Inferno with Kaalia the Vast, Mirror Mastery with Riku of 2 Reflections, Devour for Power with Mimoplasm, Counterpunch with Gave, Guru of Spores, and Political Puppets with Zendru the Great-Hearted. We're going to rank each deck across 5 categories: power at release, consistency, salt factor, upgrade path, and legacy. Each category is scored from a 1 to 10 for a total possible score of 50. Whichever deck has the highest total moves on as the Commander 2011 champion. And as I go through, I'll explain why they landed where they did, so you can agree, disagree, or yell at me in the comments. Let's get into it. Let's start with Kaalia. Kaalia is one of the most iconic commanders in all of Magic. The ability to drop angels, demons, and dragons for free is terrifying. Out of the box though, the deck was a little chunky. Too many tap lands and not enough ways to protect Kaalia once she hit the field. That gave her a power score of 7. Explosive, but fragile. Consistency, I'm going to put at a 5, because if Kaalia dies twice, the deck just stalls. Salt factor, a solid 7. Even in stock form, people hated seeing Kaalia across the table, because she could just slam an Avacyn or Balefire Dragon out of nowhere. As for upgrades, that's where Kaalia really shines. Swap in a better mana base, a few boots for protection, and she becomes terrifying. That's a 9 out of 10 for an upgrade path. And finally, legacy. Kaalia is still one of the most beloved and feared commanders in this format. That's another 9 out of 10. Add it all up, and Kaalia's total score is a 37 out of 50. Next up is Riku. On paper, he's insane. Copy spells, copy creatures, double your value. In practice, the Precon just couldn't support him. Too expensive, too slow, and too inconsistent. For power, I gave him a 6. The ceiling was there, but you rarely got to touch it out of the box. Consistency, just a 4. Because without perfect ramp, you'd stumble. Salt factor, I set at a 5 because people knew Riku could be dangerous. But in this form, he mostly just dirtled. The upgrade path, though, is a strong 8. Because once you add cheap ramp and ETB creatures, Riku becomes a value engine. Legacy-wise, I gave him a cool 6. He never really became a true staple the way Kaalia or even Mimoplasm did. That lands Riku at a 29 out of 50. Now for one of my favorites, the Mimoplasm. This deck just worked right out of the box. Know yourself, exile threats, and suddenly Mimoplasm is a giant monster with abilities just stapled on. That's an easy power 8. Consistency also at a high 7. Because self-mill and recursion mean you usually get to do the thing. Salt factor is also a 7. People don't like seeing their graveyard stolen and turned against them. For upgrades, Mimoplasm is a dream. Graveyard decks only got better with time. That's definitely a 9. In Legacy, he's still respected as the scary one from Commander 2011, so I gave him a solid 8. That gives Mimoplasm a total of 39 out of 50. Here's the sleeper powerhouse of the set, Gave, Guru of Spores. At first glance, he's just a token guy, but even in the stock Precon, synergies between tokens and counters gave him inevitability. Power, I scored him at an 8. He doesn't one-shot kill like Kalia, but he takes over games. Consistency, 8 again. Multiple engines keep the deck going even if Gabe gets removed. Salt factor we'll put at a 6. Not the scariest table presence until you see infinite tokens start happening, but when it comes to upgrading, Gabe is off the charts. Any token or counter synergy cards make him better. That is a 10 out of 10 upgrade path. Legacy, he's still known as a combo commander who can go infinite in a dozen different ways, so that's definitely an 8. Total score for him would be a 40 out of 50. And finally, poor Cedru. Political Puppets was the weakest of the 5. Fun? Sure. Competitive? Not at all. Power just gets a 4. Consistency? Only a 3 because the deck doesn't really know what it's trying to be. Salt is a 5 because donating bad permanents is funny, but it doesn't win games. Upgrade path? I'll give it a 6. There is a very niche deck here if you lean really hard into the donation theme. Legacy, I gave it a 5. People remember Cedru fondly, but mostly as a meme. That leaves Political Puppets with 23 out of 50, putting it in last place. So here's how Commander 2011 shakes out. In first place, we have Counterpunch with a score of 40 out of 50. Second place, we have Devour for Power at 39 out of 50. Third place, Heavenly Inferno at 37 out of 50. Fourth place, Mirror Mastery with 29 out of 50. And last but probably least, fifth place, Political Puppets with a score of 23 out of 50. And just like that, our Commander 2011 champion is Counterpunch, led by Gabe Guru Spores. Consistency, upgrade potential, and hidden infinite combos just pushed Gabe ahead of both Kalia and Mindplasm. That means Gabe will be moving forward to represent Commander 2011 in our early era finals brackets. After the success of the very first Commander decks in 2011, Wizards skipped 2012 and came back swinging with the next wave in 2013. This was a huge set. It was the first time we saw 3-color Shard and Wedge commanders and Precons, which completely changed how people built decks. These Precons weren't just popular at the table, they also shook up the secondary market. 2013 gave us some of the most famous reprints in Precon history, and a couple of commanders that would go on to define whole strategies. So let's dive into 2013, starting with Eternal Bargain. Olero gave this deck raw power before the game even started. Free life gain and incremental drain from the command zone made it one of the scariest Precons at casual tables. The library itself wasn't perfect, but Olero carried it. I'm going to give this one 8 out of 10 for Powell, because it has really strong passive commander ability, but the deck struggled to close games cleanly. In means of consistency, the life gain theme was there, but it didn't always connect cleanly into real win cons. Sometimes you sat at 80 life with no payoff. Sometimes you drew the right pieces. So I'm going to put this right at a 6 out of 10 for consistency. It could fire smoothly, but too often stalled without a closer. This was one of the saltiest commanders of its era. Watching someone turtle up behind life gain triggers while everyone else tried to claw through it got old fast. So I'm going to give this definitely a 9 out of 10 for salt factor, because Olero's passive value made games drag and frustrated opponents. Upgrade path. Esper gave you clear directions to push this further. Better life gain payoffs, sweepers, and infinite combos like Exquisite Blood and Sanguine Bond. This one deserves a 7 out of 10 for upgrade path. It's easy to strengthen, but the theme locked you into life gain / control. Olero is still remembered as one of the most iconic commanders in Precon history. So for Legacy, I'm going to be giving him a 9 out of 10. He defined his era, and his reputation still lingers in commander discussions today. So that's Eternal Bargain, a deck that carried almost entirely by its commander. But wow, what a commander. Olero made games feel completely different, and even though the library was clunky, his presence gave this Precon one of the strongest reputations of its era. With a total score of 39 out of 50, Eternal Bargain definitely left its mark on Commander history. But 2013 was not just about Oloro. This was also the year Wizards gave us one of the most famous precons of all time, packed with powerful reprints and a commander that could cast your opponent's spells for free. This deck quickly became the must-have of the cycle. Let's take a look at Mind Seize and see why it gets talked about today. Mind Seize came loaded. Jeleva could cast splashy spells from opponents' libraries for free, and the deck itself had one of the strongest card pools ever seen in the Precon, including True Name Nemesis, Baleful Strix, and Soul Ring. So for power level, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 because of explosive commander ability and a powerhouse reprint that gave it teeth right out of the box. The game plan was straightforward. Play Jeleva, exile some bombs, and ride the value train. But like most Precons, if you didn't hit good spells or lost Jeleva early, the deck sometimes stumbled. So for consistency, I'm going to give it a 7. It's very solid, but only when the plan lined up. Very, very heavily reliant on Jeleva and luck of the exiles. Casting opponent's spells also feels like a little rude. And True Name Nemesis caused plenty of headaches. Still, it wasn't as oppressive as Oloro's passive drain, more annoying than outright hated. So I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10 for Salt Factor. It had a mix of fun chaos and mild frustration, but not table warping. Jeleva pointed directly towards Grixis Spellslinger and control strategies. Adding more extra turn spells, sweepers, and tutors made upgrades feel obvious and rewarding. So for upgrade path, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 because it gave a clear direction to grow into a powerful archetype and it was really easy to refine. Mind Seize became legendary in Precon history. Between its absurd reprint value and a flashy, fun commander, it was the deck everyone wanted from this cycle. So for legacy, I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10 because it defined the 2013 release and is still remembered as one of the best Precons of all time. With a total score of 40 out of 50, this deck was a powerhouse of value and explosive gameplay. Mind Seize wasn't just strong at the table, it cemented itself as one of the most iconic Precons ever printed. Not only did this Precon play well right out of the box, it also came stacked with some of the best reprints we've ever seen in a Precon. Between Jeleva's chaotic spellslinging and cards like True Name Nemesis, this deck was the crown jewel of the 2013 lineup. But not every 2013 deck was about flashy reprints and spellslinging chaos. One of them leaned into good old-fashioned combat, with a commander that could grow, scale, and throw damage all over the board. Next up, let's take a look at Nature of the Beast and its Naya leader, Marath Will of the Wild. Marath was flexible. It could grow itself, make tokens, or shoot down creatures and players. But the deck around it leaned heavily on big creatures in combat, which felt clunky compared to the more explosive Precons of this set. So for power level, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10, where it has respectable commander flexibility, but the library itself didn't push the power level very far. This deck's plan was straightforward. Play creatures, buff them, swing. Sometimes Marath carried the weight, other times you just drew into overcosted fatties with no synergy. So for consistency, I'm going to give it a 6. This could do its thing, but didn't always line up smoothly or feel cohesive enough. Marath could be annoying when it pinged off small creatures or chipped away at life totals, but overall this was one of the least salty decks of 2013, so it's going to get a 4 out of 10 for salt factor. Some irritation from repeated pings, but nothing table warping. Naya gave you plenty of room to explore tokens, +1/+1 counters, or straight up creature beatdown. Easy upgrades into cards like Doubling Season, Cathar's Crusade, or Stronger Ramp made this deck much better. So for upgrade path, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Because clear upgrade routes with lots of synergy available, but still creature combat centric. Marath was flexible and fun, but it never left the same mark as Oloro or Jeleva. People remember it fondly, but it wasn't a defining deck of the era. So for Legacy, it's going to be getting a 6 out of 10, because it was known as the solid but forgettable Precon of 2013. Nature of the Beast was a straightforward combat deck that worked fine at casual tables, but didn't stand out compared to its flashier siblings. Marath gave flexibility, but it lacked the raw punch and legacy of the stronger 2013 Precons. While Nature of the Beast leaned on classic creature combat, the next deck took a much darker approach. Instead of just swinging with big bodies, it weaponized sacrifice, tokens, and combo potential. This is where we meet Prosh Skyraider of Kerr, a commander that quickly gained a reputation for being way scarier than its Precon shell suggested. Prosh was a monster. Even straight from the command zone, he came in with a swarm of Cobalt tokens, ready to be sacrificed or valued. That alone made him one of the scariest commanders to come out of a Precon. So for power level, I'm going to give him a 9 out of 10 because he is explosive with built-in token generation and combo potential, way above average for Precons of this era. The deck always had something to do. Prosh guaranteed a board presence, and the Jund colors gave you sacrifice outlets, ramp, and removal. It wasn't just flawless, but it rarely felt like whiffed. So for consistency, it's getting an 8 out of 10. Strong synergy between commander and theme meant the deck usually ran smoothly. Prosh gains could turn into a slaughter fast, flooding the board with tokens and turning them into damage mana or combo pieces was brutal. And opponents quickly learned to fear him. So for assault factor, I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10. He was notorious for going infinite and overwhelming pods, even when piloted casually. Jung's sacrifice strategies had endless room to grow, adding cards like Food Chain, Dictate of Erebos, or even better ramp turned this into a powerhouse. The deck had a clear and terrifying path upward, so for upgrade path I'm giving a 9 out of 10. Straightforward upgrade path made it competitive with minimal changes. Prosh became infamous as one of the strongest commanders ever to come from a Precon. Even years later, he's remembered as a combo engine and a benchmark for what too strong for a Precon looked like. So for legacy, I'm giving him a 9 out of 10. He is a defining commander of the era, leaving a long-lasting competitive and casual reputation. Power Hungry was a aptly named deck. Prosh didn't just bring tokens, he brought fear, synergy, and an upgrade path that pushed him into the upper tiers of Commander for more years to come, with a total score of 43 out of 50. After Prosh showed us just how dangerous a token swarm strategy could be, 2013 closed with a very different kind of commander. Instead of flooding the board, this one broke the rules of the format itself, ignoring commander tax and turning combat damage into endless value. Let's take a look at evasive maneuvers led by Duravi, Imperial Tactician. Duravi's unique ability to enter the battlefield without paying commander tax gave her an edge that no other commander had at the time. Pair that up with tap/untap tricks and evasive creatures, and this deck could pull off some nasty value plays. So for power, I'm going to be giving it an 8 out of 10 because ignoring a core rule of commander made Duravi inherently powerful. This deck leaned on flying creatures and utility synergies. While the plan wasn't unstoppable, Duravi always ensured you had something relevant to do. So for consistency, it's going to be getting a 7 out of 10 because the library wasn't perfect, but Duravi tied it together reliably. Duravi quickly built a reputation as a stacks commander. Between untapping resources, freezing opponents, and dodging commander tax, she frustrated a lot of players. So for salt factor, she's getting a 9 out of 10. One of the most salt-inducing Precon commanders ever printed. Bant stacks control or value builds, Duravi opened the door to several strong archetypes. Adding cards like Winter Orb or Stasis turned annoyance into outright oppression. So for upgrade path, she's getting an 8 out of 10 because multiple powerful upgrade routes were available, especially for competitive players. Duravi became infamous as a CEDH staple and remains one of the most iconic Precon commanders in history. So for legacy, she is definitely getting a 9 out of 10 because she defined competitive strategies and left a permanent mark on the format. A deck that bent the rules and a commander that became infamous, Evasive Maneuvers was the closer of 2013, and Duravi remains a name players haven't forgotten. with a total score of 41 out of 50. Commander 2013 gave us 5 very different decks, each carving out its own legacy. Eternal Bargain showed us how a single commander could carry an entire deck. Olaro's passive life gain made Gaines drag, but also cemented him as one of the most infamous commanders of his time. Mind Seas brought us Jaleva's spell-slinging chaos and the best Precon reprints ever printed, and it became the deck that everybody wanted at the time. Nature of the Beast gave us Moroth, a flexible commander with clunky but straightforward combat plan. Fun, but not nearly as lasting as the others. Power Hungry, Unleashed Prosh, a token-making monster with built-in combo potential. This deck proved how dangerous a Precon could be in the right hands. And finally, Evasive Maneuvers gave us the Ravy, a commander that ignored one of the fundamental rules of the format. She became the cornerstone of stacks and competitive strategies. So, who takes the crown for 2013? While Mind Seas had the best value and the Ravy broke the rules of the game, the real winner of this cycle is Prosh, Sky Raider of Kerr. His raw power, consistency, upgrade path, and legacy as a competitive menace pushed him just ahead of the rest. But Wizards wasn't about to slow down. After proving that Precons could be powerful, infamous, and even format warping, they took the next big leap, Planeswalkers as commanders. For the first time ever, we saw mono-colored decks led by iconic characters, and some of these would go on to define strategies for years. Let's start Commander 2014 with Forged in Stone, led by Nahiri the Lithomancer. Equipment synergy was flavorful, but slow and underwhelming compared to other 2014 decks. So for power, we're going to give it a 5. Strong theme, but a weak output. The plan of making creatures and suiting them up worked, but it was predictable and lacked backup strategies. So for consistency, it's getting a 6. Very straightforward, but very repetitive. Not much here to frustrate opponents. If anything, this deck felt underpowered. So for Salt Factor, it's getting a 3. It's really more pity than salt. Equipment always has room to grow with cards like Stoneforge Mystic or Sword Cycles. So it's going to get a 7 out of 10 for upgrade path. Easy to improve, but color identity limited power. Legacy, I'll give it a 6 out of 10. It's cool for being the first mono-white Planeswalker commander, but not remembered as impactful. More novelty than staying power, I would say, leaving this Precon with a total score of 27 out of 50. From Nahiri's equipment, we moved to a deck that leaned on Wizards, tricks, and classic blue control. Peer Through Time, led by Teferi Temporal Archmage, took a very different approach. Teferi's untap ability enabled explosive mana plays and combos, even with the Precon's slower card pool. So it's getting a 7 out of 10 for power. Decent out of the box, scary with upgrades. This deck had a mix of wizards and control tools. It wasn't laser focused, but Teferi smoothed it out. So for consistency, it's getting a 7. It's not perfect, but steady enough. Untapping permanents and abusing mana rocks gave Teferi a reputation for enabling combo nonsense. So for Salt, it's going to be getting a 6. Annoying, but not Olaro level frustrating. Blue combo decks love Teferi. Adding mana rocks, infinite untaps, and tutors turned him into a powerhouse. So for upgrade path, he's getting a 9 out of 10, with extremely clear and competitive upgrade path. Teferi became known as a CEDH staple, even if the Precon itself wasn't busted. So for Legacy, he's getting an 8 out of 10, a commander with lasting competitive impact, leaving him with a total score of 37 out of 50. Blue gave us tricks and combos, but now it's time to head into Black's domain. Sworn to Darkness, led by Ob Nixilis of the Black Oath, took the mono-black Precon slot. Ob Nixilis leaned on life drain and demon synergies, but the Precon felt slow compared to others. So for power, he's getting a 6 out of 10. Flavorful but underwhelming on raw strength. The plan was clear. Ramp, drain, and play big demons. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it bricked. so it's going to get a 6 out of 10 for consistency. Average, no better, no worse. Life Drain is always a little irritating, but this deck wasn't strong enough to tilt tables. So for Salt Factor, it's getting right in the middle of the road, a 5 out of 10. Annoying, but not oppressive. Mono Black always has tools. Adding Tutors, Stronger Demons, or Cabal Coffers gave the deck legs. So for upgrade, it's getting a 7. Clear improvements available for this deck. Pull for flavor, but Ob Nixilis never became major EDH player. So for Legacy, it's going to get a 6 out of 10. Fun, but mostly forgotten about, leaving Ob Nixilis with a total score of 30 out of 50. Now we move into Red, and this is where Commander 2014 really hit its stride. Built from scratch, led by Duretti's Scrap Savant, gave us an artifact deck that made a lasting impression. Duretti turned Red into an artifact recursion engine, which was unique and surprisingly strong. So for power level, it's going to get an 8 out of 10. Very synergy-driven power that scaled really well for that. Looting, recursion, and artifact synergy gave this deck solid reliability, so it's getting an 8 out of 10 for consistency, because it usually did what it wanted to do. Graveyard loops could get old, but it wasn't oppressive, so I'm going to give a 5 out of 10 for Salt Factor, because it was more grindy than salty. Red artifacts became a real archetype, and Duretti slotted in as a powerful commander. So for upgrade path, it's getting a 9. Tons of room to upgrade into something brutal from this Precon. Duretti became one of the most beloved mono red commanders ever, remembered for unique gameplay and value. So Legacy is definitely going right up there at a 9 out of 10. Duretti defined Artifact Red in Commander, totaling a score of 39 out of 50. And finally, we close Commander 2014 with Green, guided by nature, led by Realize Llama Wars Fury. Lean into classic green ramp, tokens, and elf synergies. Realize gave ramp, tokens, and removal all from the command zone, making her one of the strongest Planeswalkers commanders of this set. So for power, she's getting an 8 out of 10 because she has solid value across all phases of the game. Elves plus ramp meant this deck rarely stumbled. It always had a curve to play. So for consistency, is getting an 8 out of 10 because it was smooth and reliable. Elves can be overwhelming, but this version wasn't oppressive. So for Salt Factor, it's getting a measly 4. Because it was annoying in numbers, but fair. Easy upgrades into Elf Ball or big green ramp strategies. Tons of synergy available. So with upgrade path, it's getting an astounding 8 out of 10 because wide open and powerful upgrade path was everywhere for this Precon. Realize is remembered fondly as a versatile green planeswalker, great in the command zone or library. So for Legacy, she's getting an 8 out of 10 because she is a staple commander for many, many players, leaving her with a total score of 36 out of 50. Commander 2014 was Wizards' boldest experiment yet, putting Planeswalkers in the command zone for the first time. Nahiri brought flavor, but little punch. Teferi unlocked combos. Ob Nixilis leaned on demons. Duretti made red artifacts a real archetype. And Realize gave us a flexible and reliable Elf Ball engine. And so the winner of 2014, with a total score of 39 out of 50, the crown goes to Duretti Scrap Savant. This deck gave Red a whole new identity and left a lasting legacy in Commander. After the bold experiment of 2014 with Planeswalkers as commanders, Wizards went back to basics in 2015, but with a new twist. This year's Precons were all 2-color decks, each focused on an experience counter mechanic, giving you rewards that stacked up as the game went on. Let's break down Commander 2015, starting with Call the Spirits, run by Daxos the Returned. Daxos churned out enchantment-fueled spirit tokens that grew bigger with experience counters, a steady grind but not explosive. So for power level, I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10. Why? Because he had a strong theme, but a slow clock. Lots of enchantments meant the deck usually did what it was designed to do. So I'm going to give a 7 again for consistency, because it had reliable synergy, but nothing too overwhelming. Salt factor for him, token spam can wear thin, but this one wasn't as oppressive as some others. So I'm going to give him right down the middle of the road with a 5 out of 10 for salt, because he has mild annoyance, but nothing more. Enchantments are one of Magic's deepest archetypes, so there were endless upgrades available. So for upgrade path, he's getting an 8 out of 10. Why? Because clear path into a stronger Orzhov enchantments shell. Daxos wasn't top tier forever, but he's remembered as a solid enchantment commander. So for legacy, he's getting a 7 out of 10. Why? Because he is respectable but not defining, leaving him with a total score of 34 out of 50. From steady tokens, we turn to spell sinking chaos. Seize Control, led by Mizzix of the Ismagnus, gave us experience counters that made instants and sorceries cheaper the longer the game went on. Mizzix could snowball hard. Once you racked up experience counters, your spells became absurdly efficient. So he gets a 9 out of 10 for power level, because he's one of the strongest experience commanders ever printed. The deck needed setup, but once it got going, it stayed online reliably. So for consistency, I'm giving him an 8 out of 10, because he has consistent value after the first few counters. Big, splashy turns, Stormlight combos, and counter spells gave Mizzix a reputation as the tryhard deck of the set. So for salt factor, he's getting a pretty high 7 out of 10. 7 because he's not too oppressive, but he's really often frustrating. Storm, big spells, extra turns. Mizzix had endless upgrade space into true competitive territory, with an upgrade path of 9 out of 10, being because he's one of the clearest upgrade paths of the cycle. Mizzix is still considered an iconic Izzet spell commander, holding a strong reputation years later, so his legacy is going to be a top tier 9 of 10. Defined the experience of the Kennick's potential within this set, leaving him a total score of 42 out of 50. Blue and red brought stormy nonsense, but the next deck showed us recursion at its finest. Plunder the Graves, led by Marin of Clan Nel Toth, became one of the most beloved Golgari commanders ever. Marin's recursion snowballed every instep, turning the graveyard into a second hand. So for power level, they're getting a 9 out of 10, because it was a strong engine commander that fit almost any pod. The deck's recursion theme meant it rarely ran out of gas. So for consistency, I'm also giving it a very high 9 out of 10, because it was one of the most consistent precons ever printed. Salt factor, right? Watching the same creatures come back over and over got old fast. So it's going to be getting a 7 out of 10, because repetitive grind that wore down opponents really gets under people's skins. Sacrifice, Aristocrat, value engines. Marin could be upgraded into dozens of terrifying directions. So for upgrade path, she's getting a 9 out of 10. Huge flexibility, easy to tune into top tier competitive strategies. Marin became one of the most popular commanders in the format, still loved and feared years later. So for legacy, they're getting a 10 out of 10, because this is a true staple in Commander's history, leaving this Precon with a 44 out of 50 as a total score. From recursion, we move into battle. Wade into battle, led by Kalemna, disciple of Ioris, gave Boros a deck centered around giants in big combat. Kalemna got stronger with experience counters, but the giant tribal shell was very clunky. So for power, she's going to get a 6 out of 10, because they were very big bodies, but they had very little synergy. The deck's curve was steep, and sometimes it just folded if it didn't ramp early. So for consistency, it's getting a 5 out of 10 because it was inconsistent performing. Swinging with Giants wasn't particularly offensive to anyone, so for Salt, it's going to get a 3 out of 10 because no one really expected anything different. Boros always had limited tools, and Giant Tribal wasn't a deep archetype. So for Upgrade Path, it's going to be getting a 6 out of 10 because it was really just narrow upgrade routes. Kalimna wasn't bad, but the deck didn't leave a lasting impression compared to others of this set. So for Legacy, they're going to be getting a 5 out of 10 because this deck was very largely forgotten, leaving this Precon with a total score of 25 out of 50. And finally, Commander 2015 closed with a Simic, and finally, Commander 2015 closed with Simic. Swell the host, led by Izuri Claw of Progress, turned experience counters into +1/+1 counter engines and explosive creature growth. Izuri could turn small creatures into huge threats quickly, scaling with every turn. So for power level, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 because this deck just had strong snowballing power. Token makers and cheap creatures ensured Izuri always got value. So for consistency, it's also going to be getting an 8 out of 10 because it had very smooth gameplay. Giant creatures smashing face gets irritating, but not oppressive. So I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10 for Salt because it's kind of salty, but mostly because of the big swings. +1/+1 counter decks have endless support in green and blue. So for Upgrade Path, it's getting an 8 out of 10 because this is a very strong archetype, so it's super easy to upgrade. Izuri became a respected Simic commander, popular in casual and semi-competitive pods. So for Legacy, it's getting an 8 out of 10, a well-remembered deck, leaving it with a total score of 38 out of 50. Commander 2015 was all about experience counters, and it delivered some all-time greats. Daxos brought steady enchantment value, Mizzix turned into a spell-slinging powerhouse, Marin became one of the most loved and feared commanders ever, Kalimna struggled with Boros' usual problems, and Izuri scaled creatures into monsters. And the crown for 2015 with a score of 44 out of 50. The winner is Marin of Clan Nel Toth. This deck defined recursion strategies for years and remains one of the most popular precons Wizards has ever made. After experience counters in 2015, Wizards decided to go even bigger in 2016. Literally, this was the year of the 4-colored commanders, something players had wanted since the format began. Each deck had multiple leaders to choose from, but one face card defined each list. Let's take a look at Commander 2016. Starting off with Entropic Uprising, led by Yidris, Maelstrom Wielder. Yidris turned every spell into a cascade trigger if he connected in combat. That meant chaining spells into more spells, overwhelming tables in a storm of value. So for power, he's up there with a 9 out of 10 because this Precon is explosive with Cascade Engine that's right from the command zone. The deck sometimes struggled to make Yidris connect, but once he did, the library exploded. So for consistency, it's only getting a 7 out of 10 because it had a high ceiling, but swinging. Cascade Chaos is fun for you, not so fun for everybody else. So for Solve Factor, he's getting a pretty high 7 out of 10 because he's annoying when the chains get out of hand. Storm, Chaos, or Cascade focus builds gave Yidris tons of room to grow. So for Upgrade Path, he's getting a 9 out of 10 because the Upgrade Path was almost endless. Yidris became one of the most iconic 4-color commanders, remembered for flashy plays and chaos. So for Legacy, he's getting a 9 out of 10. Why? Because Yidris is a defining face of 2016, leaving him with a total score of 41 out of 50. From Chaos, we move to Peace. Stalwart Unity led by Kaonios, and Tiro of Miletus gave us a group hug deck that was all about helping the whole table. The deck helped everyone, not just you. It could enable big plays, but rarely won on its own. So for power level, it's getting a 6 out of 10 because it's fun, but it's not really that strong. Group hug decks are consistent in that they always do their thing, give resources away. So for consistency, it's getting a 7 out of 10 because it's reliable but not self-serving. Hard to hate a deck that helps you, though enabling the wrong player could cause frustration. So Salt Factor is getting a very low 3 out of 10 because this deck is mostly harmless. Group Hug has fewer competitive upgrade routes. You can lean into politics, but not raw power. So for Upgrade Path, it's getting a 6 out of 10 because this archetype has a very limited ceiling. Beloved as a casual table deck, but never broke into serious play. So for Legacy, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 because it's really only remembered fondly by casual players. This totals up a score of 29 out of 50. From the friendliest deck, we moved to the one that defined a generation of commander, Breed Lethality, led by Atraxa Praetor's Voice. Became one of the most popular commanders ever printed. Atraxa's Proliferate ability supercharged planeswalkers, counters, and infect strategy. The deck itself was strong, but Atraxa as a commander was a game changer. This one's power is going to be a 10 out of 10 because it's one of the strongest Precon commanders of all time. The library supported Proliferate and counters well, and Atraxa tied it together beautifully. So for consistency, it's getting a very high 9 out of 10, with smooth gameplay and a very strong synergy. Infect and Super Friends both brought plenty of salt, and Atraxa fueled both archetypes. So for Salt Factor, it's getting an 8 out of 10 because it's powerful and often frustrating to face this commander. Counters, Infects, Super Friends, Atraxa had nearly endless upgrade routes. All of them are powerful. So for Upgrade Path, it's getting another 10 out of 10 because it just had an infinite ceiling. Atraxa became the single most popular commander in the format for years running. Even today, there's plenty of people who still run Atraxa. So for Legacy, it's getting a 10 out of 10. It is a historic, defining, and unforgettable commander, totaling a score of 47 out of 50. After Atraxa's overwhelming dominance, we shift to something much simpler: combat damage. Open hostility led by Saskia the Unyielding was all about swinging wide and hard. Saskia doubled combat damage pressure by making you hit 2 players at once. So for power level, this is getting an 8 out of 10 because it's aggressive and dangerous at the same time. The deck wanted to attack, and it did, but removal or board wipe slowed it down, so consistency is going to get a 7 because it's reliable pressure, but it's very fragile. Nobody likes being focused down, and Saskia made that personal. So for Salt Factor, it's getting a 7 out of 10. Aggro salt more than combo salt, really. Plenty of support for aggressive strategies made upgrades natural. So for Upgrade Path, Saskia is getting an 8 out of 10 because it really had a clear path into a stronger deck list. Saskia became the go-to aggressive commander in 4 colors. So for Legacy, it's getting an 8 out of 10 because it was very memorable and very impactful on the commander community, totaling a score of 37 out of 50. And finally, Commander 2016 closed with Artifacts. Invent Superiority, led by Brea Ethereum Shaper, turned 4-color artifacts into a flexible, powerful engine. Brea could make tokens, stack them for value, and threaten combos, all from the command zone. So power level is right up there at a 9, because it's a powerful ability and a powerful archetype. Artifact recursion and synergy meant the deck kept its engine running. So at consistency, I would rank it at 8 out of 10 because it had very strong reliability. Sacrifice loops and infinite combos gave Brea a reputation for ending games suddenly. So Sol Factor, I would say a 7 out of 10 because it's very notorious for combo potential. Artifacts are one of Magic's deepest archetypes, and Brea had access to nearly everything in 4 colors. So for upgrade path, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 because it is near infinite upgrade ceiling. Brea became a competitive staple, feared in CEDH and beloved in casual alike. So for Legacy, it's getting an astounding 9 out of 10 because it just has a really good enduring reputation, totaling a score of 42 out of 50. Commander 2016 broke new ground with 4 colored decks, and each left a lasting impact. Yidris gave us a Chaos and Cascade Chains, Kianios and Tiro brought table politics, Atraxa became the single most popular commander in history, Saskia pushed aggressive damage, and Brea turned artifacts into a 4-color combo machine. So the crown for 2016, with a near perfect score of 47 out of 50, goes to Atraxa Praetor's Voice. This deck didn't just win 2016, it became one of the most iconic precons of all time. And that closes out the very first era of Precon Royale, covering 2011 through 2016. Here are your set champions. 2011 brought you Gave Guru Spores with tokens, +1/+1 counters, and sacrifice value. 2013 brought you Prosh, Sky Raider of Kerr, the token-making terror that turned sacrifice into victory. 2014 has Doretti, Scrap Solvent, proving that mono-red artifacts could grind with the best of them. 2015 has Marin of Clan Nel Toth, one of the most beloved recursion engines in Commander's history. And 2016 brought you Atraxa Praetor's Voice, the proliferate powerhouse that defined an entire generation of Commander. These 5 decks stood above their peers, each earning their place as a set champion. But this is only round 1. These champions will face each other again to decide the era champion of the early years, and the winner will move on to the ultimate showdown, the Precon Royale Championship, where every era's greatest precon collide to crown the best of all time. For now, the early era is sealed. Next time, we enter the middle years, starting with 2017, where Wizards raised the stakes with tribal themes, politics, and precons that changed the Commander landscape forever. If you enjoyed this trip through the early era, hit like and subscribe. We've got way more Precon Royale battles ahead. And I appreciate all of you watching, commenting, and subbing to this channel. This community is what makes it fun for me and for you.